In my email, I often received questions from subscribers asking for help with overcoming either a porn addiction or a sex addiction. And there are also females that struggle with this. It's not only a male thing. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the root of porn and sex addictions. There's a difference between a porn addiction and a sex addiction. A porn addiction is something internal. You're trying to soothe something internal, and in a sex addiction, you try to soothe something with external activity. Both have the same root: condemnation. That's it. I made it very easy for you with this video. The root of porn and sex addictions is condemnation. Somewhere while growing up, you were convinced by the world that you are a piece of trash. And now, to numb out the nocebo effect of this conviction, which isn't true, you now want to either embrace a sexual image that is a lie. That's what pornography does. It offers you a sexual image that's not true, because you think you're seeing a man and a woman laying with one another, but it's really a man with another man, but the other man is has undergone surgery to look like a woman, so it's a tranny. So that's what porn is. So you're using a sexual image to soothe the pain on the inside, or when you have multiple sex partners available, you sex out the pain. That is the root of all porn and sex addictions: condemnation. Whether it's a female that's a porn addict or a male that's a porn addict, is the same root. With both men and women, it's the same root when it comes to sex addiction: condemnation. You think that by indulging yourself excessively in this physical activity that we call sex, that you will gain some esteem. That is the core motivation behind every porn and sex addiction. It's not the activity itself that they are clinging on to. Because often they regret spending all those hours on the internet watching porn. Often they regret sleeping with so many people. So it's not the activities that they're clinging on to. It's the euphoria that they get while being involved in the activity. And the euphoria comes from the idea that you gain some significance. Why? Because you were told you're not significant. You were told that you didn't matter. So now you want to matter, and the way you think you will matter is by having control sexually. So it's a clinging onto control that gives you this euphoria. Because all addictions are about control. All addictions are control issues. It comes down to this: there's something you want to avoid. It's often something internally. It can be something externally that you should avoid, but whether the avoidance is legitimate or not doesn't matter. There's something you want to avoid. And to avoid this, you want to have some control. And you find an activity that gives you a sense of control. And now you cling on to the euphoria that you get from this activity. So now you keep doing the activity, and before you know it, that activity has you, instead of you having the activity. So now it appears as if it's the activity that you're addicted to, but that's not the case. You're never addicted to an activity, because an activity will exhaust you if you keep doing it over and over again. What you are clinging on to is not the activity, but the euphoria you get out of this sense of control that activity provides you with. And that's the core with sex and porn addictions. It's this sense of control that you cling on to, because this sense of control numbs out the pain of you not being able to avoid whatever you want to avoid. And because the thing you want to avoid is something internal, you will always carry it with you wherever you go. So it doesn't matter how many porn videos you watch. Even if you watch porn 10 hours a day, I don't care how intense the porn is, because this is how it goes with porn addictions. First, they just watch two people making out. Then they go to extreme fetishes like SM bondage videos. Then they go to gay porn. From gay porn, now they go to animal porn or to child porn. So it goes on and on and on. So it's a black hole that sucks you in more and more. But it's a sense of control that blinds you from realizing that you have a problem. The same with sex addictions. If it's a female, it often has to do with father issues or with rejection issues. She thinks that by receiving the male sexual attention, she thinks that by receiving all that male sexual attention, that she becomes valued, that she becomes valuable. She feels valuable at the time she's doing it with all those different men. It's later that she realizes, come on, that she begins to realize, why was I so cheap? Why did I allow all those men to touch me? Now they're all talking about me, so even took pictures of me. Why did I allow this to happen? They're not proud of it, but it's a sense of control that they can numb out the pain, they can avoid the pain. That is what motivates them. With a man, it can be that he wants to prove that he's a man. And because it's often praised by the world when men hunt on women, yes, that's how I'm going to call it, to hunt on women, they receive the praise of their peers, and this praise covers up the pain of rejection that haunts them on the inside. So it's not the sexual activity itself that's the issue. And it's not them watching porn that's the issue. They shouldn't watch porn anyway because it's not real sex. It's fake. Porn is fake, so you shouldn't even watch porn. So it's not the porn that's really the issue. Neither is it the sexual activity. Because natural sexual activity is designed by Christ. But it's their misuse of sexuality that's the issue. And why do they misuse it? Because they are fleeing. They're fleeing. And it's this fleeing that traps them. This is how it goes. When you keep fleeing from stuff over and over again, eventually you'll hit a wall. And when you hit the wall, it will be a very rude and very unpleasant experience. Hitting the wall can mean that one day you are arrested for child pornography or for trying to hook up with an underage girl or boy, or it can be that you realize that you have a sexual transmitted disease, or it can be that you hear that one of the thoughts you are sleeping with now is pregnant, and now you have to pay child support, or it can be anything unpleasant or very harmful that you'll encounter. That happens when you keep on fleeing. So nobody has the right to keep on fleeing, no matter what it is you are avoiding. If what they are avoiding is legitimate, they should seek help to be delivered from the thing they are avoiding. If what they are avoiding is illegitimate, they need to repent. They need to be renewed in their mind. People that keep on fleeing, eventually they enable danger. And some turn out into perpetrators. So, why do people feel condemned? And why does this act out in a sexual way? It is because we live in a world where natural sexuality is discouraged, is repressed. It's either repressed by overwhelming you with pornographic material. Remember, porn is fake, so it's not real sex they're exposing you to. If it was real sex they would expose you to, it wouldn't harm you. But because they expose you to fake sex over and over again, it traumatizes the mind of the young people that are in the formative years. Or they condemn human sexuality as something filthy and dirty, even though it's a necessity for human survival as well as for the functioning of the human community. So those are the two ways natural sexuality is repressed by the world. One is considered modern, that is the pornographic exposure over and over again, and the other is considered conservative, when they consider sex as something dirty that can only be sanctioned as clean by a marriage license. But whether you have the conservative or the quote-unquote progressive or liberal suppression is still suppression. And it's this suppression that makes people feel like trash. And it's this suppression that pushes them into porn and sex addictions. So porn and sex addictions are not something individuals just choose. They don't say one day I'm going to become a porn addict, or they don't say I'm going to become a sex addict. No, it develops over time. And it's the result of societal conditioning. A community where people have a natural and a Christ-centered view on sexuality, in such a community, no porn nor sex addictions can exist. Porn and sex addictions are the fruit of a dysfunctional community. A community that's sexually dysfunctional will manifest porn and sex addictions. So it's never a personal issue. It's a collective issue that manifests in individual lives. But too often we see it as an individual thing. It's not an individual thing. A community that's sexually dysfunctional will manifest sexual violence. And the milder forms of sexual violence is porn addictions, or are porn addictions or sex addictions. So porn addictions and sex addictions are milder forms of sexual violence that manifest in a community that's sexually dysfunctional. Collective sexual dysfunction has plagued the human species ever since the fall of man in the Garden of Eden. Just think about it. Most people can't even stand nakedness. You were born naked without clothes, and when you leave the world, temporarily, you will not leave with clothes either. You won't even leave with your body. So nudeness or nakedness is your natural state. But people can't handle that. Why? Because ever since the fall of man, the human species turned into an anxious collective. Human beings without Christ are anxious. So they want compensation for being vulnerable because they can't handle nor accept that they are vulnerable. And human sexuality has all to do with being vulnerable. The man has to admit that the woman is vulnerable, and the woman has to embrace the vulnerability to receive the strength of the man. And when they, in this vulnerability, entrust themselves to one another, you can have a sexual union, and children will be born. You will have families, you will have communities. That's how it goes. But if you can't embrace nor accept your vulnerability, that is a form of condemnation already, because you're rejecting yourself. And it's this self-rejection that is the root of collective sexual dysfunction. And one of the fruit of this self-rejection are porn addictions and sex addictions. So, sexual dysfunction happens in many ways. Porn addictions and sex addictions are just two milder forms of it. More extreme forms are rape, sexual molestation of children. Those are the extreme expressions of sexual dysfunction. But in the world, you have this idea that just because something is not extreme, or they can manage it, that it's okay. So porn addictions and sex addictions are considered not such a big problem, because the world has ways to manage those defects. The world even benefits from those defects. Think about the red light district. Think about the porn industry. Think about dating apps. All those industries depend on you being sexually dysfunctional. And sexual dysfunctionality is something of the mind. It's not something of the body, it's something of the mind. When the mind is alright, the body will be alright. If the mind is in danger, the body will be in danger. That's how it goes. Just realize that porn addictions and sex addictions are fruits. So don't attack the fruit, deal with the root. The root is self-rejection that's embraced by the world. So collective sexual dysfunction is a red line throughout human history. And throughout human history, people found ways to deny it. But it's happening. So, what do you do about a porn addiction or a sex addiction? First, you recognize it's happening. You recognize that it's a defect that harms you and those around you. You realize that you didn't do it on your own. It's a collective thing that's manifesting through you. You are involved, so you are responsible because you are involved, but you didn't origin with you. And then you realize, okay, I need to be delivered. How are you delivered? By facing the rejection issue you have. Face that self-rejection. Face that anger against yourself for being vulnerable. Once you face self-rejection and it dissolves, your porn addictions and sex addictions will dissolve also. Because the porn addiction and sex addiction are a manifestation of self-rejection. So, where there is no self-rejection, there can be no coping mechanisms, because porn addictions and sex addictions are coping mechanisms. But if there is no self-rejection, then there are no coping mechanisms. So deal with the root. So now you need to know how to deal with the root. Well, you deal with the root by just acknowledging that you rejected yourself and that you need to repent. You need to embrace your natural vulnerability as Christ intended you to be. Christ intended you to be vulnerable so that His strength would manifest through you. So you have to embrace God's plan. That is the answer. That's the answer. Embrace God's plan. Well, that's it for now. Keep agreeing with Christ and be at peace.